We're here, man.
We are here. You pumped?
It's been a long time coming. Yeah, I'm fired up. I was thinking,
When do we start talking about this?
literally right after our first expo last year. I remember exactly where I was sitting. You called me. I was driving, and you called me, and I was sitting up at a hospital in Pickerington, and you asked like what we could do to, you know, separate our show or whatever, and this was just the first thing that popped in my head. If we consistently did this at least once a week, like something that just will be better. So, yeah.
Well, I guess in my brain, because it's taken us so long to do it, it feels like it's probably been like over 2 years. And that's probably not true. It's
Yeah.
just,
I mean,
it's been a long time coming.
yeah, I've probably been listening. I jumped in that podcast world a couple years ago and just kind of um, quit watching TV altogether just because I feel like I work 24/7 and I'm just, like I said, digitally taking in content now. But I started thinking about it then, probably with Blue Rock, but this is much better because I didn't. I think it's much easier with both of us, like to keep it going. This will be my only night. You will see me up here in my old hunting den, kind of tucked in the corner, and got a little makeshift table set up. But we'll be making a little studio down in the dungeon here this weekend, hopefully.
Got a nice little 4 point over
Yeah,
your head.
yeah. It's that guy's probably one of the oldest deer I've ever killed, but he doesn't have the most impressive rack. But good memory to say the least.
All you can see is like where the main beams start to
Yeah,
come off his head.
yeah. I did that purposefully. I'm not trying to make this big rack deer cast or podcast. Deer cast.
Maybe next year we'll
Yeah,
start that one, right?
yeah. That's what Addie told me. She said I should
Talk
well, she
about
said
deer.
I should have put this table over there, and I've got three of my biggest bucks in the other corner of the room, kind of looking all stallionish over there all together, and one's on a whiskey barrel. You've seen them, but she said I should have put that in the background. But
Yeah.
this was literally my only option, and as least of arrogant as a way as it can sound. Like there's nowhere in this room I could have set this table and not had a deer behind me. So it is what it is.
Um, well, that's a great segue because I mean, tonight we really just want to talk about kind of who you are, who I am,
Right.
and just kind of where it all started. So that way, kind of going forward, we can just talk about fishing, life, whatever. Um, so you're in a room full of deer, but you're passionate about bass fishing. Like, where did all that start for you?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I was just born into it, really, being a hill jack down here. We live in Muskingum County. I have my whole life, kind of East Ohio. Um, my grandpa, my dad's dad and mom, um, lived in Whitehall on the east side of Columbus, their whole lives. Grandpa has he passed away last winter, but he told me so many stories. Just I mean, they grew up in the hood, like they were poor Columbus inner city, and dad and Uncle Don and the kids, there was just kids getting in trouble and stuff, and they moved down here, and I'm thinking it was right around 1980, maybe a little before, maybe a little after. Actually, I think it was before, and they moved down to Morgan County, and Grandpa got a job down at Central Ohio Coal, which is kind of known for the big muskie, and it's a big surface coal mining outfit. That's now it's where the Wilds is and everything. But grew up. we always had keys to the haul roads and stuff out there, and they'd strip coal and reclaim ponds, and um, had access to some of the best hunting and fishing a guy could ever ask um, for as long as I could remember. I was on that podcast last night. They asked me my first fishing memory, and I remember I was probably about 4 years old, but I remember we were catching channel cats at some pond, and I vividly remember like how they kind of squeal and kind of make that noise when you catch them. That was my first kind of vivid fishing memory, but just led into hunting and growing up, spent ton of time in the woods, and jeez, uh, I'm old now, but um, just uh, just how it was. Like I said, I was kind of just born into it.
Well, because what else is there to do down there?
N-
I mean, you're literally kind of in
Yeah,
the middle of
so
nowhere.
that was the thing. Like,
At least compared to
right.
where I'm at, I consider where you're at
Yeah,
in the middle of
so
nowhere.
especially growing up, I grew up on a dead end road, and you didn't really get to choose your friends. It was kind of weird living out in the country like that. Your friends were just the neighbor that the neighbor kid that was just close enough to walk to that your parents may let you hang out with, and that the one kid for me, he was a bit older than me, probably introduced me to some things that uh, that stuff happens as a kid, but a lot of firsts with him, and became well cultured at a young age. But I mean, through all that orneriness, we had a hustle. I'd walk to his house about a mile, and then we'd walk about another mile down to this pretty decent sized creek, and take 5-gallon buckets, and we'd pick crawdads almost every day on summer break, daylight to dark, and we'd come back and put them in a big fish tank, and then the next morning we'd call every bait shop in Zanesville, just hoping to get a quarter a piece out of them. And by the time we could get my mom or his mom to drive us to a bait shop, half of them would be dead. But it was just the things, the crazy things you do living in the country to entertain yourself growing up. There was just always something creative like that. Being somewhat poor, and uh, just all you got's woods and wildlife and a fishing pole, and uh, tons of good memories. Wouldn't have it any other way. So uh, yeah,
Well, and I think you were fortunate that you're surrounded by the outdoors. But I think anyone that's interested or passionate about fishing or hunting or hiking or whatever it is that's outdoors, I mean, they're going to find that little patch of grass or woods
yeah,
or a stream that they can go and
yeah,
be at. So, because I mean, I had one in my little hometown. We had some waterfalls with a creek that ran out to the lake, and we do the same thing. We just go down to the creek and after school and catch crawdads just to catch them and let them
yeah,
go.
yeah. I don't
So,
know how many people I've met over the years that like just a creek was a huge part of their life at some phase of when they were a kid, or um, just at some point they spent a lot of time at a creek. Like, I think it's just how things were. I don't know that it's so much that way now, but it I tell my kids constantly, like, the girls are wanting to, me to do this or that, which we do all kinds of fun stuff, but I always say there's a creek right across the road. Go down to the creek. You can walk it clear to the river, and it's just like mind-boggling to them. But it may be just because they're girls. But um, there's something about a creek and a kid that age of, I don't know, maybe 8 to 14 or 15 years old. If you've got a creek around, there was fun to be had catching chubs and seining minis and catching snakes and crawdads. It's whatever the day brought you is uh you were just going to the creek. That was it. So It was great memories.
Well, I think there's definitely a cultural shift too because I'm 41, and I mean I had a Nintendo as a kid, but I mean just playing outside was your entertainment most days. You didn't have the option to play on an iPad or a phone or whatever kids have these days. And my kids are guilty of it. Like, we'll just, hey, go outside and play. There's nothing to do
Yeah.
out there, and um, there's definitely a big difference in when we grew up and when our kids
Yeah,
grow up.
for sure, man. I mean, I don't wanna make us sound old. I'm creeping in on 40, so, uh, but, like, you think about that, I'd be gone. I'd leave the house in the morning on summer break, ride my bike to his house. All at this time, parents are gone to work. So, no communication. They just, you told them the night before or early that morning what you were going to do that day. Well, in the meantime, they go through a full 8-hour workday, come home from work, cook dinner, this and that, and like I'm coming rolling in from the creek, soaked in gym shorts and rubber boots and a cut off shirt, carrying a fishing pole and a bucket at right before dark. And like to think about in today's world, um, just use the wife for an example as your mom, like she'd be freaking out just knowing her kid's been gone somewhere 14 hours and no communication whatsoever. But I think just the phones have done that, like struck a little fear in everybody. Like if you can't instantly communicate, there's this huge fear. I mean, I'm guilty of it. If I think I lost my phone, I instantly freak out just because basically I run my whole life through it at this point with business and everything. But it's crazy. It's really crazy to think about that. What, just maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was that different. So,
Well, and we're more aware of things going on in society
right.
too, to kind of make
Yep.
you more on alert.
That's a great point.
But like I've been gone since 8:30 this morning, and I rolled in about an hour ago, and we just signed up for that Life
Yep.
360 thing. And so before Meredith would my wife, she'd text me all day long, like, "Hey, what time you coming home?" But now she's like literally following my car as I'm
Oh,
driving
yeah.
wherever I'm going, and she knows when it stops, and just takes that little bit of
She's
anxiety
got an
away from it.
alert set on there when you pull into Fisherman Central now.
Right. And then the alerts start going
Oh,
off on the
yeah.
bank
Oh,
account,
yeah.
like
For
fraud
sure.
transactions and
For sure.
lockdown.
So, yeah. So, what about you, man? Your early years, kinda growing up, what got you into fishing or what does it mean to you?
Well, so I started off in upstate New York, which I'd say is probably pretty comparable to where you're at, except it's flat and we didn't have the hills and stuff. And the town that I'm from was right on the shore of Lake Ontario, and so my summers were just we'd pack up the car and we'd just go sit by the boat ramp or whatever local park that we could go to, and my parents would fish and we'd throw rocks, and that was my earliest exposure to fishing. In my earliest memory, we were fishing the Erie Canal with my grandpa, and I hooked a carp that was, I don't know, it was maybe 15 inches or so. But as like a 6 year old, I mean, that's a fish of a lifetime. And so all I remember was just pulling up this huge fish, and from then it was like, well, it's
Yeah.
in my blood now.
Yeah.
Like that's what we go to pass time, and now I just caught something huge, and so fishing is one of those things that's just always kind of it's been in me. It's been part of my life, but I didn't really start fishing until maybe 15 years old. I'd ride my bike to it was like one of those retainage ponds outside of a company, and got permission to fish there, and caught my first bass that I can remember. And and after that, That's all I wanted to do. And so we lived across the street from a scrap metal yard, and my dad was buddies with the owner, and we'd get bicycles and different things from there every now and then. Well, I found this motorcycle. I want to say I had to have been 15, and he let us have it. And so it was a little Honda CB 300 or 350, and my stepbrother and I rebuilt the carburetor on it, and I'd drive it through the trails 2 towns over to go fish the local lake, and I'd just ditch it in the
Nice.
woods, walk to the lake, fish, hop back on it, and ride through the trails home like it was a dirt bike. And so that was kind of
You were that little hellion.
the better part of my
Yeah,
teenage
you were that
years when I wasn't being influenced by
the
that.
little hellion that all the old people in the subdivision hated for raiding all their ponds, weren't you?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
Never got kicked out of any golf courses or
you
anything,
know,
but
that's, that story you just told, it's just so similar to mine. Even with me growing up in the sticks, it's crazy how similar, things are, just how similar fishing makes things, even if you're from kind of a different walk of life originally, than I was. But we had a little community pond and walked to it every day I could, and same deal, man. It's I feel bad for the people that just didn't get introduced to the outdoors or give it a chance, because it's just got so much to offer. I couldn't freaking imagine where I'd be if grandpa hadn't made that move. He read the writing on the wall, like he had to get his kids out of the city, and that was in the 70s. So he could have just let it ride and stayed up there, and I mean, none of us would probably even be here, and we've got a huge extended family in this whole area down here now, all because of him making that decision. So it's pretty cool.
so how do you like obviously you're huge into hunting and fishing and do your kids share that passion? Like how do you get them involved? Like cuz you were drug into it. Or I mean, are your kids in that same boat? Like you just kind of drag them into it or are they passionate about it?
um yeah, so my oldest, Addie, she's 12. She is ate up with hunting. Fishing, not so much, and I'm not one to like shove it down her throat either. Like I just if I'm going to go dump the boat in the river, in the evening or something, she'll go every now and then. But um, she's sh- she's just not as into it as she is hunting now. When she was like 3, 4, 5, and probably even 6 years old, Sydney had changed her degree from she was almost finished with nursing, and she had a last change of heart and wanted to switch to education. So she was working at a bank and going to school in the evening. So Addie was she was checking trail cameras with dad, and feeding and all that stuff you do. And I was dragging her through the woods, and she hated it for a while, and she'd cry, and I'd have to beg her not to, get me in trouble with her mom for taking her, on the buggy into the woods and looking for mushrooms or whatever we was doing. But she was going with me regardless. But through all that, like she found a love in it, and like now it's I mean, I never really got on a good buck this year that really got my juices flowing, so we focused on her, and she hunted hard. Like she had a couple, failed opportunities, but um, it was a long year, but she just did not give up. She ended up missing one with the crossbow and the muzzleloader, so we're going to have to do a little more target practicing next year. But it's definitely not all about the kill. I've gotten to the age where I've learned to put the ego aside and just appreciate, so much more from it than just killing an animal or catching a giant bass or whatever.
Was there a noticeable point between when you were dragging her along and she hated it to she at least had an appreciation for it and then she had just a fire
Yeah,
for it? Or did she just go tagging along with dad and just
I
enjoying
think
that
sh I
time?
think it just was a bond that we built through it, and then, like, it got to the point where I think she shot her first deer with the crossbow when she was 8. But what happened was it just she got attached probably more to just spending time with me in the evenings while Sid was finishing school, and, um, it just was like, "Hey, daddy's going hunting." It evolved to, like, and if I was going to sit in a blind, like, I wasn't gonna tell her no, but she just wanted to be with me, like, and then it turned into, like, she finally got to shoot a deer, um, and then it was really, and I've tried to take the time to, film her shooting the 3 or 4 deer she shot, so she gets to kinda relive that and gets all fired up with it, but it just evolved into, like, probably more of a bond, and I'm working on that with Paige. She's only 6, but she's, uh she's just not into it yet, and you don't wanna force it, but she likes to go help us do some prep work and stuff, like, setting blinds up or this or that, but, she's not quite ready to sit out there, but that can change real fast, so I'm just gonna let her ease into it if she wants to go, and, hey, maybe she'll never like it, and that's fine too, so but she will be doing something.
Well, and I don't yeah, I don't know about you and your experience, but for me, like that's kind of how it started too. Like my family drugged me along to sit and let them drink
Yeah,
beer and fish, and then I catch my own, and then I start getting a passion for it, and that's kind of where my kids are too. Like both of my kids wanted to fish a tournament
yeah,
with me this year, so I took my son, and he basically just sat under the console the whole time out of the sun. But he fished for a little bit, and he just wanted
yeah,
to spend the time with me. And then my daughter, when I took her, she'd been begging me for probably 2 or 3 years to go fish a tournament, and I didn't think either of them could make it through the day because it's a long
it
day
is.
fishing 8 hours, and you're waking up super early to get to the ramp. And then it started raining halfway through the tournament, and uh, she felt bad because she didn't want to leave me alone in the boat to fish the rest of the tournament. And she was going to have my wife come pick her up, and then change her mind. And so it's cool just seeing that evolution from uh, this is dad's thing to we want to spend time with dad to where then it becomes their own, and they start getting passionate about it. And now they have their own tackle
Yeah,
boxes with their own lures, and it's a
yeah,
super cool
it
evolution.
is. It's a neat process, and, like like I mentioned, we're kinda getting to the age where it's just, I didn't mind at all just taking her out and burning the woods out this year. Like, there was nights when I knew, like, we probably shouldn't continue to go here, but, she wanted to go, and I knew we would see deer. We just probably weren't gonna see the deer or a deer that we were after, but, it's just, you know, the times that you can go sit out there are kinda priceless, so you put some of that aside and just go do it. I mean, it's not she's not probably gonna wanna do that forever, and, I may not be able to do it forever, or you may not be able to do it forever, so I think anytime your your kid wants to do anything with you, even it not be hunting, uh, I heard someone say, lazy parents make lazy kids, and I'm a firm believer of that. If you stay active and keep them busy, and kids don't just become lazy on their own. So I just if they ever want to do something, I try to do it.
For me, I I think I have a tendency to just be selfish with my time and what I'm passionate about, and so for me, it was a real struggle to set aside the fact that I could probably come in last place at a
Right.
tournament and just use that as time to spend
Yeah.
with kids. And but I'm telling you, man, like once I did it, like just the kids being there. Um, I heard a song by Luke Combs the other day, and he was talking about him like remembering his dad and how he felt like he remembered his dad being 10 feet tall and
Mhm.
bulletproof and having a Superman logo on his chest. I mean, that hit
Yeah.
home for me because like I feel like that's how my kids see me. Like, hey, dad's fishing a tournament and he's the best fisherman in the world, regardless of what place I come in. And to them, it's
Yeah.
super important.
Yep, it's true. I mean, in all reality, you're probably just the net man, but, um
Right.
no, yeah, it's cool, man. It's just being a parent in general is a blast. I wouldn't give my girls up for anything. It's probably truly been the best thing that's ever happened to me. Um, uh, Not just that they're girls, but girls will definitely change you, that's for sure. But um, just the whole experience, like I truly cherish being a parent. So it's all fun. So
So, how do you balance that dynamic though of like what you're passionate about and you
yeah,
fish a lot of tournaments, and so like that comes with a sacrifice
yeah,
too. Um, so how do you balance? Hey, I'm going to go spend time and I'm going to sacrifice myself for this tournament to go do this with my kids versus like, hey, I need this time for me. Like, what's that dynamic look like? And then like, why is that important to you to be able to go and
yeah.
do those? Not with your
No,
kids,
for
but by
sure.
yourself.
I don't know if you were up there at the expo when me and Andy were talking about it, but I think it was me, him, and Sid. But uh, like we were just talking about how selfish of a sport being like a tournament guy is, and it's true. It's a very selfish. Bass fishing's a selfish game. Not that we mean to be. It's just naturally kind of that way. You kind of got to keep things to yourself and you got to be away from the family and it's all just kind of chasing this passion and there's a little pride and ego always involved and um, not so much with everybody but you know what I'm saying like and that it's hard to balance that the way I balance it I've just had to slow down a little bit. I mean there's definitely some other things that I'd love to fish and travel and stuff, but I truly just can't take being away from the kids and knowing they're missing me or this or that. So I've just kind of kept it somewhat local or statewide the past 2 or 3 years, and uh, that's the short answer to your question, really. We'll maybe get to the point where we can travel some more, and it's just expensive with the kids right now to do. You know, as well as I do. The higher level you try to fish, the more expensive it gets. So, um,
Well, and the more time because you're traveling
right,
further and
right,
all that
right.
too.
Yeah. So,
Um, but that's not to say that you haven't given up tournaments completely. So like they're important to you. Fish, even just going out and fishing is important to you. But what does that do for you? Like,
yeah.
why is that important? Like just
Well,
having that time on the water or in the trees
I'd
or
say
whatever.
probably you could agree, like, we need it for our sanity a lot of days, like, take the selfishness out of it. Um, it's therapy for us, and, the one little series that I kind of obligate to fishing, start to finish, it's one I fish with my dad, so he's not getting any younger, so that helps me balance out, like, if I feel selfish being away from the kids, well, I'm balancing that out by, knowing I'm spending quality time with my dad that's not gonna be there forever, but, um, even jumping on the river for a couple hours in the evening, even if I can get out once a week, it's a great reset, and I enjoy going by myself, just, everything's quiet, can go do something stupid if you wanna go try something stupid, and, just, uh, decompress, if you would, and that's what hunting is to me as well. It's a good decompression from, just naturally the business I'm in. It's fishing, 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 fishing all year. And when fall rolls around, business slows down a little bit, gives me time to take a breath and go. I'd have to say lifelong my passion for bow hunting, in particular whitetails, has probably been higher than fishing, but just when I got into my 20s, dad, we started fishing some tournaments together, and it's just been, that's grown as I've gotten older. Let's let's talk about some scenarios. Like I said, I put a couple questions together for you. Um, let's go. If you could spend 8 hours on the water with somebody, who would it be and why?
That's a really tough question, especially just to drop on someone like this.
It's a tough one.
Um, yeah. No, because like from a developmental standpoint, I'd want to fish with someone better than me. Like, I mean, pick a legend in the sport. Like, I mean, you can name any of them and just, hey, I want to learn how to skip a jig, or I want to learn how to fish a jerk bait, and just spend the whole day with them, or dissecting bodies of water and just becoming a better angler. Um, but honestly, I think the most fun that I've had was just being with my kids on the water and just teaching them, like, hey, this is how to throw a drop shot, and let's just throw it next to a dock, and then they get bit by a little warmouth or a rock bass or something, and just seeing them light up, like, that's truly that's truly what's fun to me. It's just watching them light up when
Yeah,
they get a bite. Um, but then again, like, I mean, I've got family and friends uh, that I have a different reason to want to fish with them.
for sure.
Like, I'm going up to New York in April to fish with my cousin, and that's going to be a blast. Like, truly look forward to that. Um, you and I are going to try to jump into a tournament, uh, and I look forward to that for a
Yeah,
different reason. So I guess it really just kind of depends on what my goal is, or what I'm trying to do. And to go back to that therapy comment that you made, like, um, there's the passionate angler in me that wants to always do better and learn new things. But then there's the therapy aspect of just spending time with friends and
yeah,
family.
absolutely. That question, yeah, it could go several different ways. I mean, if you're talking from a learning standpoint, obviously you're going to pick a big name pro. Oh, geez, I'll just give you two answers, I guess. I guess from a personal standpoint, probably Grandpa, just because he's not here anymore, and um, never did get to fish with him quite as much as I wanted to. The the times we did get out were, awesome. Um, and then from a learning standpoint, geez, that could go so many ways. Depends on what you're wanting to learn, but I'd say like right now at this point in time, if I could get on the water for 8 hours and just straight learn, it would have to be Wheeler. I mean, it would have to be. So, I mean, he's a young dude, but He's, I mean, a Hall of Famer guaranteed. He doesn't have the accolades yet as like a Van Dam or anything like that, but the dude's just it's crazy how adaptive and it just never stops. I think you could learn so much from him in 8 hours.
Well, and you could learn, I mean, any dynamic of fishing that you wanted to get into, right? Like you could go up to Erie and learn how to catch smallmouth better offshore, or you can go to Florida and punch mats. I mean, you name it. Like he's
Oh my
just a
god,
stud.
yeah, he just freak.
So if bass didn't exist anymore, or if you just weren't able to fish for bass anymore, and you had to pick another
That's a
species to
depressing
target,
day.
what would you choose?
Oh, geez, I'd probably real quickly just turn into a hardcore uh saw guy, walleye guy. That's kind of in my blood. That's what dad's always before before we really started fishing a lot of tournaments together. That's kind of all, when I was in my teens and into my 20s, like I was really busy playing sports. I was, three sport athlete all through high school and just didn't fish a ton for those 4 or 5 years, of kind of being really competitive with sports. But as soon as I got out of high school, I needed something to replace all that. So we started fishing some Wednesday nighters, and then it just turned into, it's been just 20 years of, learning and good times on the water ever since. So um, it's, it goes fast. I'll tell you that. It goes real fast.
Now, when I think of walleye or saugeye, I think more just trolling, just because I'm closer to Lake Erie and that's kind of all I know up here. That's a drastic difference from bass fishing, where you're just constantly casting and moving.
Yeah,
Uh, do you feel like that'd be a
man,
difficult
wouldn't it
change,
be like,
or are you more like
yeah,
fishing below the
yeah,
dam kind of
that's
thing?
that's kind of what, you know, that's more what I know of it, especially down here with like Buckeye Lake and Salt Fork and Senecaville and all these little lakes that are within an hour of me. They're that type of lake, just casting a small swim bait or um, a grub or a jerk bait or something for them. But it's not, to me, it's not near as fun as just bass fishing in general, just all the targets. And I think guys like you and me, our minds are always going 100 miles an hour, even though we may not show it. But that's that's what probably drives my obsession to bass fishing, just all of that. And then you can throw in the competitive aspect, which filled a void for me after I got out of high school and stuff, and uh little gambling. It's like just a fun mix of everything bass tournaments are to me. Um but the next best would have to be the toothy critters. I I've never done a ton of crappie fishing, but um, a few times, and it just aside from just filling the freezer, um, it's just not my thing. So, and that's fine. But it it would be it would be Soul Guy walleye that replace it for me for sure. How about you?
Yeah, I've got a buddy. He's got a walleye boat, and he goes up to Erie a lot, and I'll tag along with him a couple times a year. But and that's fine for me, because it's really, for me, it's just enjoying the company until something bites, and then you get to reel it in and eat it for dinner. But I think for me, honestly, I'd probably take up fly fishing,
Really? Really?
because then you get to move around the rivers and creeks
Yeah.
and stuff, and you're still casting at targets. There's a challenge there that I've only gone a couple times, but that's something that I'd probably
Yeah.
want to try to
Yeah.
take up and learn, if if I had to park the bass boat, I couldn't do it
Well,
no more.
I mean, I guess that just never really crossed my mind because down here, obviously, we live what 2.5 hours apart. Like it's just not really ever been an option down here. As far as like, I mean, I could go bass fish or pan pit fish with a fly rod, but you've got more options closer with trout or steelhead or what whatever's going on up there in those tributaries. Um, but yeah, I guess that's a valuable option for you. I hope you don't, but it's a good option.
No. Honestly, like, fly fishing to me, there's just so much to learn, like, all the different lines and,
Yeah,
different types of flies that sink and float,
yeah,
and I mean, it's really not different than any other species
right.
once you learn it,
Uh,
but,
I mean,
um, I just haven't had the capacity really to put effort
yeah,
into it.
just from like an outsider looking in, it just never looked like my jam. Like there's it seems like there's kind of an etiquette to it, or I don't want to say snobbiness, but like it's definitely like its own thing. But you could say the same thing about a bass tournament angler. There's a lot of clickiness, and you might not be in the cool club or have the be in the new shiny boat club or whatever. But that's all fine. I think with anything where there's competition, um, there's from the bass fishing aspect, there's going to be some clickiness and all that. Like if there's one thing I could take out of tournament fishing, I wish some of that would go away, but I mean it just never will, sadly enough.
Now, there's a culture in both of them for sure. There's a culture in fly fishing that, um, for lack of better terms, I would call like it's a proper. It's like golf, right? Like there's an etiquette, like you said, and there's a culture in
Yeah,
tournament bass fishing
yeah,
too. And depending on the level that you fish, if it's a club, usually it's a good group of guys that you get to
right.
know. But even within that, there's some dynamics
Yeah, I
playing.
remember not too long ago I saw a reel of Theo Vaughn describing it on the Joe Rogan podcast as homoerotic, the way they dance with that rod. Cracking me up. Cracking me up. I'm just not gonna put you in that category right now, Aaron. So yeah, well, good enough. Good enough. I'm not gonna let you become a fly fisherman if I have anything to do with it, but um so so let's go back in reverse a little bit. Not to drag this on all night, but I mean, I've never really got to ask you as a friend, like, um, obviously you've been in the military and all that, but like, what led you down that path? Was it just a need to serve, or did something happen there? And like, do you think that um, when you got out of the military, do you think that fishing and hunting helped be some type of therapy for you after being on a few deployments and all that?
Yeah, so for me, like the whole military thing, like growing up in high school, like I just never had uh, the realistic goal of going to college. Like it just, I grew up poor. I got bad grades in school. Didn't have a very close family life. Um, my dad dropped out of high school when he was young, and so the odds of him being able to kind of coach and guide me that path just it wasn't a reality. And so, kind of later in high school, with the group of friends I started hanging around with, they were all going off to college, and so that's like the seed got planted. Like, hey, I can do more than what I'm currently on the trajectory for, and so um, really the military was kind of the path to that. But it wasn't a reality at that point. And so once September 11th happened, Um, it was kind of like this level of patriotism and pride for the
Yeah, for
country kind of really took off just
right.
nationwide, right? And then when the war in Iraq started in early 2003, um, just seeing the news and stuff, I just felt a calling to just go and serve and be a part of it. And um, I had a really unique perspective and I guess experience with that because um, when I wanted to serve, I didn't want to go fight bad guys. I wanted to go and be a part of it and just help other
Yeah,
soldiers. And so when I signed up to be a
nice.
chaplain's assistant. And so for those that don't know, the chaplains, they represent pretty much almost all or most faith groups that's out there. And as an assistant, you get assigned randomly to a chaplain, and however they best serve in a religious capacity to the troops that you're assigned to, you support him and therefore support those soldiers. Um, and that's not to say that if I got paired up with a Muslim chaplain or a Catholic chaplain that's different than me, that I wouldn't be able to kind of represent my own faith group. It's just we support and we're there for the troops, and the religious aspect is just a part of it. Um, so I deployed 6 months after I got to my first duty station. I was newly married, and uh, and it was tough. It was my first time ever away from home for a period of time like that, um, and it was just a real growing experience for me. Fortunately, I didn't really get this. I didn't have to see um, any traumatic events or firefights or bombings or anything like that while I was there. Um, Mainly because I was in a support capacity. Um, and I was also with an aviation unit, so anytime we needed to go anywhere, we'd
Right.
just fly from place to place and just go visit troops and provide
Yeah.
counseling and whatever we could to kind of help
Right.
make their frontline roles better. And then I came home uh, right after we got back. I was stationed. I got relocated from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, to Fort Riley, Kansas, um, and that was really, other than the 6 months that me and my wife lived together, um, that was really the first time that we got to spend time together, married, and live together. Because she finished up her first semester, or her she finished up her semester at Kent State, and then came down to stay with me right before I deployed, and then she went back after I deployed the second time. But anyway, so that first year, it was just me and her, and being in Fort Riley, Kansas, like there, you want to talk about nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing out there, and there's a lake on each side of the base, and so fishing kind of became that foundation again, where um, I'd get off work, I'd go fishing for a couple hours, or her and I would go in the evening to just a local park and fish for catfish in the pond, and just spent time that way. And then, uh, like you said, it was that therapy piece. Like I'd go fish the spillways, just trying to catch whatever I could. Back then, I'd throw a rooster tail in the river and
Yeah.
catch little smallmouth, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was pretty much on a year, off a year. I'd be home for a year, and then I'd deploy for a year. And then after the second deployment, uh, my wife was like,
Right.
"Hey, your contract's up. Let's let's hang up that." And so I got out, and but yeah, fishing. I mean, it's been the foundation, and it's just been that one constant through all of that. And even in Iraq, there's bases there, and she shipped me some fishing poles, and
Nice.
I got to fish on
Good
base for
woman. What
for
kind of fish do
her.
they have over there?
I've got pictures somewhere. I'll share eventually. I don't even know. It looks so the base that we were on in Baghdad, it was one of Saddam's palaces at one time, and uh, and there's a lake there called Z Lake, and they had these monster catfish eel looking
Gnarly.
things that are like 6, 8 feet long. Um, yeah, and I never caught one of those, but the one that you'd catch a lot kind of looked like a snook,
Okay.
and so you'd fish for them just the same as you would a bass, and I mean it was a
Yeah.
blast.
Well, that's cool, man. And that's the way you served is it's a special way to serve. There's not a ton of guys that can fit that mold, and it honestly makes perfect sense just by knowing who you are and the friends that we've became. So that's cool. I guess all these years I've never really asked you about your military career. So that's good to know. That's cool stuff. Um, we're about an hour in. Do you want to talk a little bit about just what our goals or direction or some of the topics for anybody that listens to this first one, kind of what we're going to try to do or things we've talked about wanting to do with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is kind of what we did tonight. Just talk about just kind of life and um, how fishing is always just a constant part of that, and what it means to us. But it's also for at least you and I, it's more than just a hobby. Like you have a business in the industry, we share a business together in the industry, um, and bringing on guests that either serve in a similar capacity. They have their own businesses, and they're like what they have new and exciting coming up that they can talk about and share with others, um, or even just professionals that are outside of the competition side of the industry, whether it's
Yeah.
biologists or just kind of what's going on in our
Yeah.
waterways, and just how we can just help anglers be better at whatever they're targeting, and just share that passion and the
For
pursuit of it.
sure. For sure. I agree 100%. I think of words like community. I'd like to grow a community with us and have uh, we've got connections to some good guests. I think we'll have some awesome podcasts, and we've kind of set a goal to drop one of these a week, and that it may be 2 weeks straight with a guest, and the third week it's just us shooting a bowl on a topic that we've got on our head. But we're going to try to be really consistent and stream it on three different platforms. I think we were talking about Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. So um, when we get it all up and running, a subscribe or a comment will kind of help us grow and all that good stuff. We don't really we don't really know what this is going to do or where it's going to go. We almost talked about it as just we talk on the phone so much on a weekly basis. We just kind of saw this as another form of just some fishing therapy and BS, and I think it'll turn out to be a pretty cool thing though. If you made it this far with us tonight, I'm going to have to listen to it myself to see how boring and dry we are and how much we need to change. How many times I know I counted myself saying right at least a dozen times. So um, we'll listen to it and critique ourselves, and we'll get better. Just like the show, this Rome wasn't built in a night. So uh, I'm not too stressed out about that part of it, but I think just closing it out, I I'd say a virtual high five. I feel like we did a decent job.